Our title this morning is The Love That Lives Within. The love that lives within is the core of everything that we believe. All of this energy, all of this love starts from within. We are not a teaching of duality here. We are a teaching of unity, of oneness, of infinite love. Infinite, by its very definition, implies it has no separation from any of us. It must be part of us all the time. It isn't something we seek outward. It's something we find inward. This infinite power of love, always saying yes to everything we choose to believe. And the freedom that comes with love is the freedom to choose. Our human nature allows us to deny our spiritual truth or embrace it wholly and fully and enjoy it in all of its magnificence. Ernest Holmes writes in the Science of Mind textbook that hate begets hate. If we choose to empower thoughts of hatred, thoughts of ugliness, thoughts of duality, that's what we experience. It will show up for us again and again and again in a myriad of different forms. And every time we think we've defeated it, if we haven't let it go, it shows up again. Toxicity builds up when love is withheld. If we forget to love ourselves, that toxicity will destroy us from the inside. It will eat away at our very core. It will poison our very thoughts, our dreams, our beliefs, and eventually our actions. The toxicity will constantly eat away at us. Hate begets hate. If we believe in a duality, if we believe we are separate from this power of love, that belief will be demonstrated. Consciously or unconsciously, Ernest Holmes continues, we direct the flow of universal mind into form. Therefore, our choices are very important to us. Believing in the toxicity, believing in a duality, believing in a separation from our source of love will perpetuate itself if we allow that to continue. We are intelligent beings. We get to choose. We get to recognize that this infinite power of love is from within, flows through us, restricted only by our own beliefs. If we allow our beliefs to be only that of love, only that of joy and beauty, only those of harmony, then that love flows through us purely, effortlessly. Ernest Holmes continues, so much of our ordinary thinking lapses into habitual patterns. With little variation from one day to the next, our lives mirror this and fall into serial monotony, interrupted by episodes of trouble, panic, and loss. We live, then, as limited, crippled versions of who and what we are, suffering the continuance of emotional plagues and toxic thoughts. And the world reflects this tragically. We bring into our experience those toxic beliefs. And by poisoning ourselves from within, we contaminate everything around us. In class, some of you have heard me talk about my conversations with a former employer where we uplifted our own little egos by putting down other people. And constantly the back and forth, the chatter, oh, this one did that, he was so bad, and oh yeah, you didn't see this, but let me tell you about it. we are so much better than that was the backstory conversation in our heads, that we were putting somebody else down to make ourselves feel better, until as our spiritual awakening began to blossom and take over our thinking process, one of us, I'll take credit, because I happen to be the leader in that particular one, stopped feeding that wolf, stopped acknowledging that negativity was important to my well-being, stopped reinforcing the putting down of somebody else to uplift myself. And there was a shift. And both of us, the old saying, a rising tide lifts all boats, both boats began to lift, until that conversation ceased to exist. And our conversations turned to other worldly events and things of interest to both of us that were a little more positive and uplifting, not by design, but because we had nowhere else to go. When we stopped being forced to put others down to uplift ourselves, we just found better things to talk about and had much more enjoyable lunch breaks, because our indigestion level was allowed to be reduced. Because, you know, when you're trying to eat a meal in a hurry, which I don't know if you're like me, but the lunch break is really pretty short most of the times. If you're trying to force that food down quickly and your gut is tight because you've got all this angst and bitterness and hatred welling up inside of you, you're not helping yourself. You're making it very difficult for your body to do what it's designed to do, to process and digest and energize yourself with that food. As much as you're blocking the flow of love with your heart, you're physically blocking the flow of nutrients to your body, because nothing's working right. Everything's bound up. And it makes for a miserable day, and then you feel more miserable, and guess what? Your misery compounds itself, builds upon itself, and rewards itself with even more misery. So in the science of mind, we invite you to let go of those kinds of thoughts, to understand and remember that we are loving beings. We are spiritual creatures. We are joyous, harmonious, and creative in everything we do. So let's create something joyous. Let's create love. Let's create beauty in our experience by recognizing it's already there. We don't have to go out and build it. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We simply have to release all of the negativity that we bought into. We are limited only by concept, Holmes writes, and the refusal that comes from ignorance or laziness to remount the slope of thought. Our ignorance of our true selves eats into our daily experience. The people that you see that are bitter and mean are not bitter and mean by nature. They're simply not aware of who they really are. If they ever knew, they've had it drummed out of them. Their teachers, their parents, their siblings, everybody around them, their community has reinforced again and again that, oh, we have to be better than the people on the other side of the street. We certainly have to be better than the people on the other side of town. And those guys on the other team, absolutely worthless. There isn't a decent person amongst them. We can't possibly allow them to be victorious over us in a simple game of soccer or basketball or whatever the sport may be. And we have these bitter, bitter rivalries between teams. People, I mean, if you're watching the World Series, you'll see people get really serious about this stuff. And it's one thing to be dressed in Dodger blue and say, yay, Dodgers. It's something else to say, down with Houston. You know? I mean, why would you do that? They're both good teams. They're both great players, and they're both wonderful cities. It doesn't matter who wins at the end of the day, unless you're an owner, and then maybe it matters, but nobody else gets a check, you know. I had somebody ask me once, well, Miami's in the Super Bowl this year. This is a ways back. You know, why aren't you excited about that? And I go, they never send me a check. They've never sent me a check. No matter how much I root for them, I don't profit from them winning a bit, other than civic pride. And I don't really live in Miami, so not really that connected to it. And if St. Louis wins, or the Giants win, or somebody else wins, as long as it was a well-played game, I have a good experience. I know it drives my India probably a little crazy because I do like to watch the football on Sundays, and there are several games you can watch during the course of the weekend, and I'm not attached to any of them. A little bit to the Dolphins, I mean, you know, a little pride, but come on. But I enjoy a well-played game, and I can enjoy it no matter who does it. I like to see an even score because that means both teams are having a pretty even experience. I don't particularly care for a runaway game because it's sort of like, yeah, somebody didn't show up and why bother? There's always another game on, so you go find that. But to draw a line in the sand and say you're wearing the wrong colors and that's why you have less value than me, that's kind of shallow. Love doesn't work that way. Spirit is colorblind. Spirit has no agenda. Spirit, I like to say, is pretty much dumb as a post and only has love and can only say yes. And we come back to this over and over and over again. It is what we feed into it that comes back to us. When we feed in a belief, a duality, that we're separate, we're going to give examples of that. When we feed in love, the love flows back. So this love that lives within, it really is an inside job. It starts with us. And it starts with us loving ourselves. Because we have to love within before we can project without. We can do a pretty good job of fooling people, but we can never fool ourselves, and we certainly can't fool the Spirit. We can go around and be generous. We can contribute to charities. We can volunteer. And at the end of the day, if we go home and say, I did good today, but I didn't do enough, what was that second part of the sentence for? Leave out the comma, leave out the but, get your butt out of the way, and focus on, I did good today. I helped somebody else. I felt right doing what I was doing. Forget any other judgment. If it felt right, you're done. You had a good day. Accept it. I said last week, accept the gift. If you have to sell it later, you can sell it later. But for now, that is the joyous part of this teaching. Acceptance. Acceptance of the gift of love that is given to us freely and unconditionally. Joyful fulfillment is our ultimate reward. It is the science of mind version of heaven on earth. Just feeling the joy, the peace in our heart. That is our reward. Everything else falls into place. I haven't been able to find a bad parking space this week. Haven't consciously made an effort, but I've had one good parking space after another pop up in front of me, and I gladly accept it. Didn't have to walk too far in the rain to get a pumpkin yesterday. That was a good thing. Or the mud. Dr. Holmes talks about no resistance. Let that love flow. Let it flow freely. In our Science of Mind teaching, we use that circle symbol with the 3 layers and that middle layer being the filter. Flush that filter out. Get all those negative thoughts out of there. Just let the free thought of freedom and joy and beauty flow down through. It feels good. It feels good. Let it happen. Holmes writes again, very often the word of healing is spoken and does not appear to operate because it is hindered by some obstruction. Some people are obstinate, resistant, and stubborn. Anybody? You know someone? And they must be healed of these beliefs. But they must heal themselves. They must allow themselves to recognize that this joy and love is theirs to simply accept. And it's ours to allow them to make that discovery, to encourage them to make that discovery, to withhold any idea of judgment, which is really just our own toxicity. Let it go. Just let it go. And let the others find their own path. Encourage them. Withhold judgment. Because the judgment is just those three fingers pointing back at you whenever you point at them. Let it go. The practitioner, that's someone in Science of Mind who does prayer with you and for you, must know that there is no resistance to truth and no thought anywhere that can prevent the consciousness from perceiving the truth. Now, Holmes is writing to his practitioner core here, but a practitioner is anyone who is doing treatment, and we can all do treatment for ourselves as well as for others. So each of us is, in our own way, a practitioner. When we do our own affirmative prayer treatment, affirming our own truth and beauty, and knowing our own truth and beauty, we are, in fact, a practitioner. So this does apply to everybody. And Holmes reminds us, again, that when Jesus said, resist not, he meant that non-recognition of evil is the only way to avoid it. Don't even empower it. Don't even let it know. I mean, it's not even in the room. If we don't recognize it, it's not there. This is true according to the law of cause and effect. For what we persist in recognizing, we persist in holding in place. We persist in empowering it by believing in it, by giving it our power. It is thus empowered. It is the darkness that appears to be when we turn off or block the light. And since we can't turn the light of truth off, we are only blocking it. So again, remove the blocks. Let the light do what the light does. The darkness isn't there. Simple as that. That which we refuse to recognize, we neutralize. And it is no longer there as far as we are concerned. Again, freedom of choice. The love gives us the freedom, and with that freedom, we choose to accept the love. When we express God as God expresses, we are in true acceptance of the love within. When we express love freely and unconditionally, we are truly in the image of God. The question would be, what would you do for love that you wouldn't do for pay? And the story that went along with that was the example of someone who walked into a hospital room to visit and found the patient's friend patiently cleaning sores of infection. And you can imagine the discomfort that that scene might bring to your mind. And the friend said, how can you possibly do that? I wouldn't do that for $1 million. And the friend simply said, neither would I. What would you do for love that you wouldn't do